Elon Musk has no idea what he's doing about politics. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
This is a dog-eat-dog world, and you don't have a right to a job. You have to earn your spot.
Like, we want more young people. Like, you fire all these like young people in their 20s that just got their first job who aren't making any money anyway. So stupid.
I'm trans, is that going to be a problem? Can I join the Navy and do these things? And my answer to them then was, absolutely, you can right now. I can't say for what happens next year.
There's no way to determine when they're applying for the government or not, if they're smart or not. Like, we want smart people.
We're cutting people's salaries. We're stopping their livelihood. We're disenabling them to take care of their families without actually knowing what they do.
And they're gonna get paid salaries. That's not what's bankrupting us. What is bankrupting us is Social Security, Medicare, and the defense money. Okay, so if you're not talking about one of those three things, you're just talking shit. And I know because I'm a shit talker. Hi everybody, this is John Koenig back for Real Veteran News 44. I'd like to remind everyone real quick to watch the whole video and leave a comment if you want to help out. Really appreciate that a lot. So, this week, before we get started with interesting discussions with some of my veteran friends, I want to talk a little bit more about the DOGE firings, the federal budget cuts, and all that stuff. I'm going to try to keep it short because I spent a lot of time talking to Mark Peterson about the Trump speech. I've been having discussions with my friends about this. DOGE, the budget, the country's going bankrupt, all this stuff. And I just want to codify the argument that I'm making here, which is that, yes, the federal workforce probably a little bit too big. Yes, there are people who do nothing. Yes, there are people who are worthless. But they are interspersed and intermixed with people who are doing very important stuff. Some people work very hard. Some people don't work at all, right? So at the bottom line of the firings is there's no effort being made to figure out who's smart, who's not, who's hardworking, who's not, who believes in the mission, who doesn't. And a lot of that is basically because of Elon Musk not knowing what he's doing and thinking that this is like one of his personal businesses. The fact of the matter is they're not reducing the debt. The firing people, not reducing the debt, it doesn't even come close to making even a scratch in the deficit, much less the actual national debt. They have used language like, oh, we're going to pay down debt or whatever. No debt is being paid down. Like, they've got a $2 trillion deficit. You're not paying down any debt until you balance the budget first. So we're really talking about like potentially balancing the budget, which isn't going to happen, like newsflash, because of Social Security, Medicare, and the defense budget, right? The discretionary spending is really just less than 30% of the whole budget, right? Federal salaries are estimated to be 4 to 5% of the total federal budget. So we're talking less than 5%. Trump and his people are trying to cut the federal workforce by up to 10%, which I don't even know if they'll be able to do that. And even if they do that, even if they cut 10% of the federal workforce, 10% of 4.5% is less than 0.5% of the entire federal budget and will not even put a scratch in the deficit, much less pay down the debt or save the country from bankruptcy or whatever. It's ludicrous. The language is ludicrous. Anyone who knows anything about the government and knows anything at all about the budget knows that the money is not in federal salaries, right? It's just a way of beating up on these people and demonizing the federal workers because people out in the country have this preconception of, this wasteful, lazy bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, deep state, whatever, and which, some of that is apt, and there is some of that, but going and firing people at random isn't doing anything. You're firing good people, people that we need, along with probably some people that we don't need. All right, so talk more about that later. Elon Musk has no idea what he's doing about politics. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. He might be good at business. He's got good ideas for his rockets and all that stuff. I read his biography. I was fine with him before this, but again, he's not American. He knows nothing about American politics. Some of his ideas are correct. Some of his ideas show how uninformed and naive he is, and how he just doesn't understand how Washington works. He doesn't understand how the government works. He doesn't understand the budget. I mean, saying you're going to cut $1 trillion out of the budget is just insane. I mean, even just talking shit like that shows that you're not serious, right? And on top of that, he's going to cut all these people, and then he says, oh, we should raise the salaries of high government workers to make them less prone to corruption. That is the dumbest idea I've heard from anyone almost ever. It's so stupid. You're going to raise the salaries. They already get paid at the high levels decent, especially for this area of the country. And then you're going to raise it, 10%, 20%? That's going to inoculate them against corruption? No. I mean, just like logically thinking about it, if a person is corrupt, they're going to be corrupt. Even if you pay them 25% more, they're still corrupt. They're going to want more. It's never going to be enough for them, right? If a person is mission focused and dedicated to the mission, you don't have to pay them more. They're there not for the salary. Like, nobody's in the federal government for the salary, okay? It's just so stupid. It's so stupid. Elon is politically tone deaf. He doesn't wear a suit to the White House, making him look like a goofball. Not even not wearing a suit. He's just not even wearing adult clothing. I mean, he's dressed in all black. He looks like the Grim Reaper. He's got his stupid baseball hat on indoors there. The chainsaw thing was so stupid. It just shows that he doesn't care. He's making arbitrary cuts. They say DOGE is popular and all the people are against fraud, waste, and abuse and all this stuff. But nobody is for just randomly hacking off people from the government for no good reason, like just to save their little piddly government salary, which we've already shown is a very small portion of the budget. Okay, the government needs people to work for it, and they're going to get paid salaries. That's not what's bankrupting us. What is bankrupting us is Social Security, Medicare, and the defense budget. Okay, so if you're not talking about one of those three things, you're just talking shit. And I know because I'm a shit talker. He's just so politically tone deaf. Like, taking your child into the Oval Office, I mean, okay, maybe or whatever. The kid is so young, he's not even gonna remember being in there. So it's not like some experience for my son, see how government works, like take your kid to work day or something like that. And putting them on live TV while you're doing your partisan politics stuff to try to exploit your kid, try to humanize yourself because you're this robot that nobody likes. I mean, it just shows how tone deaf he is. The clothes, the chainsaw, the kid. Stupid, stupid, stupid. You know, his popularity is dropping like a rock. All of his investors and all of his companies, I mean, mainly Tesla, because the public has to buy these Teslas theoretically, they can't be happy about it. Like, nobody's happy. The Republicans don't like it because he's not savvy. The department heads don't like it because they're their departments. DOGE should just be like doing advising and stuff, but it's like they're taking the lead. Like, he's in charge of the whole government. Like, he doesn't understand how to work with these people, and they all want him shut down. He went head to head with Rubio in a meeting, and well, great for Rubio. Rubio won. Trump sided with Rubio. Like, Rubio is the Secretary of State. Rubio got 99, 100 votes in the Senate. Elon Musk is a dipshit. Is a fucking dipshit. He's done nothing of genius level. He's provided nothing except for just like reckless abandon. Okay? And all the people worshiping him, you're just eating his fucking dog food. It's pathetic. I've worked in the government for a long time. Obviously, I've thought about the people that were around me and people I've worked with in the past and just experiences, mentors, everything. You know, I'm from this part of the country. Like, all of us think about cutting the government, cutting things down, how to make things more efficient. Oh, that's a waste. That's a waste. Like, we all think about it. I get it. But this is not how you do it, right? You have to figure out who we need and who we don't and who to promote. And those are the important things. It's intelligence. It's understanding how the system works, understanding how to evaluate people and make decisions and smart cuts. They should be targeting the old people, the legacy workers, the people who make the most money, who provide the least value, who are at the end of their careers, who don't have any skills. Everything is outdated. Like, we want more young people. Like, you fire all these like young people in their 20s that just got their first job who aren't making any money anyway. So stupid, right? Target the old, entrenched people who are the stewards of the fucked up system of incompetence, waste, and bullshit. Like, they need to go. Have an age limit. I don't know what you have to do, but like, what you're doing is not smart. If they're senior people, they have special skills, they know some coding language that died out 30 years ago, okay, whatever. I mean, you make exceptions, but target the old people. Give IQ tests, give personality tests, but really IQ tests. There's no way to determine when they're applying for the government or not if they're smart or not. Like, we want smart people. We want educated people who are smart in the government. Like, that's what it makes a good government. People who are not corrupt, right? Give them polygraph tests, not just to say, oh, are you working with China in your spare time or something like that. Give them polygraph tests, find out if they're corrupt, find out if they're lying about their personality and their background and so on and so forth. Like, the people going into the government should be elite. Do peer reviews, right? Like, ask the people who work with them, crowdsource the information. Be like, report on this person. What do you think about this person? What do you think about this person? Have everybody report on everybody, and then use some algorithm to figure out who the leaders are, who the people with ideas are, who the conscientious people are, who the connectors are, people with communication skills, people who are in it for the long haul, people who haven't been corrupted by the system and aren't just part of the incompetent morass. Get rid of the veteran preferences, the disabled preferences, the spouse preferences, like all that bullshit. It should just be, you want to talk about meritocracy or whatever, it should just be on who knows the most, who has the most raw intelligence, and who is the noblest person, who believes in the country, believes in the system, believes that things can get better, has ideas and visions, still has energy left in their bones, isn't just waiting for retirement. Like, these people who are just waiting for their retirement are worthless, okay? Like, they're not going to learn anything new. They have nothing special to add. Like, we need young, energetic people in the middle of their careers, people in their prime, at the top of the government and driving things, okay? Not people in their 60s and 70s. They need to find something else to do. And lastly, the most important thing they should be doing is civil service exams. Like, that's what China did for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? If you want to be in the government in China, you have to sit down and take an exam for days and days and days and show that you know all of your educational stuff, right? Like history, mathematics, science, literature, whatever. I'm not saying you have to go to college. That blocks people out. And then you start getting into this like college worship culture or whatever. Everyone has to have a PhD or everyone has to have gone to Harvard or something. Like, that doesn't necessarily make the best people. And honestly, the people who go to the Ivy League schools are not necessarily the best all the time anyway. You can have like amazing people that went to a no-name school or state school or whatever. They should have to study and show that they're committed to working in the government. Civil service exam, bar exam for lawyers is 3 days long. And I definitely don't want a ton of lawyers in the government, but develop a test that's like 5 days long. They go to some center, they sit down, they take the test, they write essays, they show that they have knowledge and an education and understanding of American culture and of history. They know geography, they know all this stuff. Right now, the way you get into the government is you just like, I have a college degree, I have some experience at some whatever, you know what I mean? And there's like this system, but there's no intelligence tests, there's no psychological testing, there's no personality testing to make sure that they're fit for the job that they're going for. They don't write some essay saying like what their ideas are and what's important to them and stuff like that. Like, that's what we need. When they open the government hiring back up, that's what we need is civil service exams, hard civil service exams, and that will deter people who don't have the smarts, don't have the education, don't have that will, and that don't want to sit there for 5 days proving themselves. And then once they pass their civil service exams, then they'll have some kind of score on it. They'll be in the club, and then they can apply to jobs. So the way it is right now, anybody can just apply to be in the government. And okay, look, you're a security guard at the Smithsonian or whatever. I'm not saying for every job in the government, but the jobs that matter, they should have to go through this. Our bureaucrats should be elite. They should be, when someone's like, oh, they work at the State Department or something like that, or they work here, they work there, it should be like, oh, damn, like they had to go through those exams. Like, what was that like? You must be one of the smartest people in the country, hardworking, dedicated, specially selected, elite people. That is not what people think now. You know what I mean? So over time, we'll start to select these really good people in, and things will get better. I mean, this is one thing that China figured out a long time ago, but we're too racist and short-sighted, and we're too biased towards our own way of thinking about things. And they just have way better people in the government there. Like, their most elite people are in their government. One of the reasons why they're kicking our ass. All right, now it's time to talk with new friend Mark Peterson. In our one-on-one discussion, we're going to talk about the Trump speech. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Hey, I'm Mark. I'm a Navy vet, and I kind of lean to the left quite a bit.
Oh, so, yeah, you lean.
But I'm in Georgia, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. It's good to have you back, Mark. We had you on a show a few weeks ago, and it was really great. So, as Mark said, he leans to the left. So I'm going to try to be more fair to Trump and Elon as I can, so that we have a little bit of a balance here when we talk. So, getting started with the speech, we're going to go back and forth with different things that we found interesting on it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was the Social Security claims. If you watch the speech and Trump's like, there was one person on Social Security who's 360 years old, and there's a million people that are 200 to 250 years old. And a lot of people were like laughing in the chamber, and people are all riled up. They think that these 250-year-old people are getting checks from Social Security every month, which is going to piss anybody off if that's what you actually believe. But my opinion, I think it's ridiculous. Obviously, he's just playing with people's emotions and playing on this idea that the federal government is wasteful, which, look, we know they waste money. Obviously, it's a bureaucracy. They waste money. They have a ton of money. They don't care about our money. Like, we all get that. But the idea that they're sending out checks to 250, 350-year-old people every month is ridiculous. I mean, any computer system, it's easy to tell this. That's why they take these children in there with their laptops and they do a SQL query on it, and they find all these people in the database. It's like, of course, old dead people are in the database. They don't delete someone out of the database when they die, but most people don't understand how databases work, and they don't understand how these checks get cut. The Social Security Administration has methods for finding out when someone dies. If they were in the business of sending out checks to dead people all the time, and it doesn't even benefit them anyway. The government's not going to do anything like this where it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't provide them any benefit. Just like throwing money out into the ether to dead people who have been dead for 100 years or whatever. I mean, it's just ludicrous. They have auditors. There's people whose job it is to go through and make sure people aren't getting Social Security checks that don't deserve them. And, they've done professional audits on it. The fraud rate is 1%, which is a lot of money. But, $70 billion over 10 years is a lot of money. But, I mean, they're spending $700 billion a year on Social Security. So what did you think about even though the part of the speech I'm talking about where he's like, there's 1 million people aged 150 to 200. I mean, what did you think when you were hearing that, Mark?
I think that the people, the young men and women in DOGE are smart enough to, when they explain how the database works, to understand like, oh, well, that makes sense. We need to readdress in the COBOL language, which is what was giving them the false ages of, people 150 to 350 years old. That was the problem. But that didn't fit the narrative that Trump and Musk wanted to use, which riled up their base, that we were paying all of these people that were so extreme in age
that they couldn't obviously be alive.
It didn't fit the narrative. Yes, the database system needs to be updated, but that costs money. Where's that money going to come from? Musk just needs to stay out of it. There are auditors, or we had auditors, the Inspector General, like you said, and systems in place to track and find these errant ways. A 1% error in $8.6 trillion over from 2015 to 2022, I don't think that's a bad rate. That's a pretty good rate, I think.
It's acceptable, but I mean, ideally, we wouldn't be making those mistakes. But there's edge cases and all this stuff, and it's just ludicrous. Like, it's like a game of telephone, right? Like,
yeah.
Trump doesn't use a computer, and so Elon goes to him. He's like, find all the old dead people in the database. So the kids go in there and they find them and they report back, And they're like, well, all these people are in the database. Notice how Trump didn't say that they got checks. He didn't
Right.
say that they're getting checks like last week or something like that. He just said that they're in the database. That's what he said. But the implication is that they're getting paid, because if they're in the database, you would assume that they're getting paid, because you don't understand how a database or how any of this works. And so they write down all the numbers, they hand it to someone, then it gets to Trump. Trump looks at it. He's like, well, I'll talk shit about this. And he goes up, talks shit about it, but he doesn't understand it. And then if anyone ever actually figured it out and was like, hey, this was an error, it's like already old news, and he can use it.
He's already made his bullet point.
Yeah, he's already made his point. So it's just like a ridiculous like manipulation, a waste of everybody's time, honestly, to that was watching it.
But he fired up the people he wanted to fire up on the topic he wanted to fire him up about.
Yeah.
So when they go to cut Social Security, they're going to get less pushback, even though the information was wrong.
And talking about just Social Security, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but like all these DOGE cuts and all of this stuff, if they just raise the retirement age by 1 year, they would save more money than all the cuts they're going to make by far. You know what I mean? Like all the money's in Social Security, and they're not going to do anything about it.
I think that's ultimately probably what they're going to try to do.
I mean, they have to eventually, but I mean, realistically, the order of magnitude of the money going out on Social Security versus cutting all the Forest Service or NOAA or all these like small USAID or whatever, like it's peanuts. It's nothing compared to like the budget.
The thing is, governments should not be run with a profit motive. They have a higher purpose. Their purpose is to serve the people that they are elected by. And it seems like that they're going after this as being run by a profit motive, which is inherently wrong. That's not what they're there for.
They see it as like a business mindset, which I get, and like running the government a little bit like a business, more like a business.
Run it lean, but not with profit motive.
I don't necessarily see it as a profit motive. Like when I listen to their language, and if you listen to what they're saying in justifying what they're doing, they use this like crisis narrative. Like we have to save the country. Like they're always saying that, yeah, we have a country to save. We have to save the country. They're like manufacturing some kind of fiscal crisis, which doesn't exist. And being like, the country's bankrupt. The country's going to go bankrupt. Like if we run out of money, they always talk about the national debt. Like the national debt's going up so much, and your grandchildren are going to have to pay for it. It's all this like emotional language to get, again, their base riled up and create this imperative that they have to hack and slash the budget down, even though they're not really doing anything towards that end. They're just making minor adjustments to the budget, and they're going to spend the money someplace else anyway. They're going to spend more money. Like, mark my words, Trump will spend way more money than when he came in. He just wants an excuse to like hack out the people that he doesn't like, basically. So
yeah.
All right, you want to bring up the next topic? Now we're on Social Security.
Since January 20th, as of this morning, Trump has already written and signed about a little more than 75 executive orders, which is far outpacing any other president at this same point in their presidency. I'm not saying he's written more than any other president. I'm just saying at this point in his presidency, he's outpacing the amount of executive orders than any other president's written at this same point in their presidency. A lot of those, such as the establishment of DOGE, should have been congressional acts. He's also from what I understand, preparing to dissolve the Department of Education via executive order, which he can't do because it was established by Congress. So he's trying to do a lot of things via executive order that should be done through congressional acts instead.
Yeah. So, I mean, Congress won't do anything about it. And so once it's already, because they control the Congress, there's nobody to push back against it. Once the Department of Education is gone, it doesn't matter what Congress has. I mean, it's just gone. Like, you can't just like reconstitute it. All right. Well, you brought up the executive orders. Like, I do think that the executive orders on day one, day two were a big hit. His whole, going to the arena and throwing out the pens, like that was a big hit. A lot of those early executive orders, especially on the border, were, good. And I understand why he's doing so many. It's a second term. He's been president before. He doesn't have to run again. He's trying to hurry up. Like, I get all that. I do think that he's trying to run up the score on the executive orders. Like, we've done so many executive orders. Executive orders are easy, and most of them are nonsense. I mean, most of them is like nothing. Like, oh, we're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico or whatever. I mean, saying that you're the best president ever because you signed a bunch of executive orders, that's ridiculous. Like, I mean, obviously we know his statements are ridiculous, but he is like an over-the-top, bombastic man or whatever. So we have to expect that. Do you want to point out one executive order in particular that you want to talk about?
If you dig a little deeper, I mean, his basis for the tariffs are all embedded in probably about a half a dozen of these executive orders having to do with economic sanctions in Canada and Mexico and automotive industries, the metal imports from both of those countries, so forth and so on. But you notice he's backed off on those tariffs. He's establishing the tariff under the guise of controlling drugs coming in across the northern and southern borders through different industries. And that's what's actually in those executive orders. But he's backed down. He backed down off the tariffs on Wednesday and pushed it back until April or so. But what changed Tuesday till Wednesday? The stock market tanked. It lost $1.5 trillion in assets. And all of his millionaire and billionaire buddies were very upset about that. Just on his threat of imposing all of those tariffs.
Well, we'll see about the tariffs. I mean, we don't know how it's going to work out. He says he's negotiating. He's saying that they're not going to last forever. He thinks it's going to be okay. So we kind of just have to see what happens, I think.
I mean, he also claimed, he's like, whoever signed this trade deal with Canada and Mexico signed the worst trade deal ever. He signed the trade deal in 2018.
I know,
it's
it's
deal.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I don't understand. He's the one that did it. He's not the great businessman that he claims he is. Or he's in a field or being advised by people that aren't as smart as he says that they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous statement, but there's something probably to the fact that these people are ripping us off. Everybody rips us off. We're the big sucker. I mean, he's kind of right. What he does about it, I don't know, whatever. All right. Like I said, I'll try to bring up something I think he did a good job on and that went over well in the speech. Obviously, he's really shut down the border. I mean, it's just like, it's not really a shock or anything. I mean, all a president really had to do is like put his foot down and be like, shut this shit down. I mean, Biden was just letting everybody in the country, essentially. Terrorists, Chinese infiltrators, obviously everyone in Central America, like anybody had like a golden ticket to just walk into America, gang members, sick people or whatever. And Trump essentially through the military and Homeland, whatever, they shut it down. So I think that's awesome personally. Obviously, he hasn't done a good job on deportations, but when he talks about the border being secure like this and that we needed a new president to do that, I think he kind of hits on that one. What do you think about the border?
Okay, so February there was 8,326 apprehensions at the border, which is the lowest it's been since 2000. But it hasn't been the lowest historically. Historically, it was 1960 and 1968 when there was less than 8,000 border apprehensions per month.
Yeah, I mean,
so
like ancient history, basically. Yeah.
Trump's hard line on immigration is likely affecting border contacts. It is. People are afraid. Anybody from a minority country is very afraid. And now even our allies are afraid. They're talking about revoking the SIPA visas for the Afghans who assisted us during the Afghan war. Have you heard about that? And deporting all them back to Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, they want to do a lot. Yep.
And deporting all the Ukrainian refugees back to Ukraine.
Well, you figure they want to keep them because they're white, but...
But they all say it's because of fentanyl and drugs coming across the border. I would say that Trump does not care about drugs at all. He pardoned Ross Ulbricht from Silk Road, who established the Silk Road, Dread Pirate Roberts. Ross Ulbricht was responsible for $2.7 billion in illegal guns, drugs, hitman hires, child pornography trade on the dark web from 2011 to 2013. And he just pardoned him.
Yeah, I mean, these politicians talk shit and they don't care. I mean,
well, I don't think he really cares.
Of course not.
But what he does care about is people who are brown and don't speak English. He doesn't want them in the country.
Yeah, obviously he's a conservative. I mean, obviously. Okay, cool. Well, one other thing that I was interested in was this, like, I also think he did a good job on it and it's very popular and it sounded really good in the speech, was the men in girls sports.
Yeah.
Which is a different way of like framing kind of like the trans equality argument or whatever. And he banned that and he's going to fight them on that. I mean, that's a winning issue. Like pretty much everybody realizes that it's ridiculous and dangerous for the young women to be playing these, transitioning men, whatever you want to call them. What do you think about men in girls sports, Mark?
I don't think it's the problem that everybody says it is. Women's sports is not an accurate statement. Claims it's dangerous to women and girls and denies women and girls the equal opportunity to participate in competitive sports. Academic research affirms that transgender women do not have any inherent advantage in sports, and I believe that all trans people deserve to play sports and do whatever they love. Parents of children want them to have access to as many opportunities as possible, and I believe that sports teaches you and young people life lessons, and this includes trans children and youth who deserve our support and to live their best lives, right?
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, why is the federal government getting involved in this? Why isn't this being managed by the organizations that manage sports, the NCAA, the IOC, the SEC? For instance, there's 500,000 NCAA athletes. Do you know how many trans women are in the NCAA? 2. There's 2. Out of 500,000 athletes, they're talking about 2 people.
Okay, we know it's an extreme minority, and most
They're using it to blow up a problem that's not even a problem.
it's emotional. I mean, it's emotional. There's like the locker room issue, where this person's in the locker room with the young women, and I know that research says they don't have much of an advantage or whatever, but like anecdotally, we all see that a transitioning man to woman goes into some competition, weightlifting, bicycling, whatever, and just like breaks all the records. I mean, it's on TV, like it's right in front of our eyes. It makes sense. Like we know that women cannot compete athletically at the same level as an athletic man, essentially. So, and it's pretty popular. People kind of want to stop. I think people are sympathetic mostly to trans people, but they're also, they feel for the girls that have to deal with it. And, so it's like you're balancing like the girls versus a couple of trans, and it's tough, but it's popular for them.
Why does this only go one way? Why is this only directed toward trans women, but there's nothing said about trans men at all?
I think you're looking at probably less of an issue. I mean, a woman who transitions to a man and goes to compete with men is not going to be competitive in anything, to be honest.
It's the same fears.
Yeah, but it's more emotional when you frame it as you're protecting the women and the girls, and and it's popular. I mean, remember the bathroom law where it's like you got to go in the bathroom that you were born with or whatever. So it's one of these like emotional issues. But I think he's hitting on that. I didn't hear anything about AI, which I was like, why I didn't expect to.
Yeah,
that sucks. Like he didn't mention China. He didn't mention AI.
He did write an executive order on AI, but I didn't dig into that.
Yeah, but he's not communicating with the people about it, and that really sucks.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's talk about the military a little bit. All right, so they caught this like Abbey Gate person,
Yes.
bomber guy or whatever, which, okay, great, hang him, whatever. He's not the problem. Like the Abbey Gate bomber was doing his job. Like that's his job, is to like kill Marines. Okay, so yeah, go after him, whatever. That's a legitimate mission and all that, and it's great. But like, get the generals. Like the generals are the idiots that were responsible for all this.
Yes.
Biden put a 4-star on one of them. Like they were getting promoted under Biden. Trump, update us in the state of the Trump. What you doing with the generals? Like the Abbey Gate generals, the Kabul generals. Like get rid of all of them. Like he trashed Milley, but that was for other reasons. But like, go get these guys and get rid of them. What do you think, Abbey Gate?
Well, I have 2 thoughts on Abbey Gate. One, I think the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a shit show to begin with.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, like the generals didn't execute it well.
Poorly planned, poorly executed. It wasn't vetted, and they did not do the due diligence that they should have, like most withdrawals are done. I don't know all the reasons behind that. I am not a logistical strategist, and I know we left a ton of weapons back behind there in Afghanistan, which is causing relational problems with Pakistan because Afghanistan's their enemy, and now they have all these U.S. weapons that they're fighting us with. That's causing political strife between Pakistan and us, which is surprising that they were so easily gave up this guy that they caught.
I think one last thing we can talk about, they talked about, was the military recruiting. numbers going up. What do you think, real quick, about the military numbers?
I think the Army numbers have been going up since February of 2024. Does that sound right?
Well, they've been trying to climb out of this. I mean, after Kabul, the military recruiting obviously went in the shitter, and the Afghanistan failure or whatever. So they were trying to climb out of that for a while, obviously during the Biden and all that. And there was also like the vaccine mandate. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why military recruiting was in the shitter. It's shot through the roof since Trump. So what do you think?
The question is, who are they recruiting? I know last year, being retired and running in the circles that I run in, I had a lot of young men and women asking me about, hey, how is the Navy? What is it like? I'm gay. Is that going to be a problem? I'm trans. Is that going to be a problem? Can I join the Navy and do these things? And my answer to them then was, absolutely, you can right now. I can't say for what happens next year. And then January came around and they passed all these mandates. You can't be trans. You can't be on this or that. So a lot of these young men and women were like, well, that option is now off the table for me. I'll do something else. So I don't know that this recruiting trend is going to keep going because they have cut a pretty substantial pool of people. And that generation, Gen Z, is pretty empathetic to the people that they cut.
When I looked at the numbers, in the kind of the bottom of the recruiting crisis, if you look at the numbers, essentially females make up, I think it's about 20%. And so females were always essentially joining at the same rate during Biden. It was male recruiting that was really far down. We were essentially losing a generation of military men that didn't want to go in this Biden whatever. So I think this rebound is, a lot of it is like this enthusiasm and like the hoopla around, oh, Trump's back, Trump, and like all the, and then, I guess, I don't know if anyone cares about Pete Hegseth, but the anti-woke or whatever. So you're getting like this rebound of these like conservative men that want to go in and be in Trump's military. I do think it's going to level off, and there's probably an equilibrium where there's a certain number of people every year, young people in America, that are going to join the military. So I think we're going to get back to basically the way it was. But for them to say that it is probably the best recruiting ever, just because of this insulin rush, the sugar rush, but it really was, in my opinion, not so much Trump, but it was like Biden's military was not great to be in, and a lot of men didn't want to join.
I was done before Biden was elected. I retired under Trump.
Well, recruiting got really bad after Kabul and all that. Kabul was Biden's fuck up. And then, and people honestly didn't like Ukraine either. It's like, you're going to join the military and it's like, well, maybe Biden will end up sending us to Ukraine. Who knows what Biden was going to do? I mean, it was really unpredictable. All right. Well, it was a great talk, Mark. Thanks again. You got any final words?
Thanks. It's always good to talk to you. Look forward to seeing you again.
Awesome. All right. It'll be a great show. And that's it for now. All right. Now it's time for our veteran debate portion of the show. We got this week Charles Sears back and Mary Kubik back as well. So, Charles, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Veteran, did 11 years in the Army, served as a deputy sheriff for 5 years, worked extensively in the courts and all that fun stuff. Now I work in tech, the owner of a couple different, like a marketing firm, IT firm, and also author of a book. So a couple books. So,
all right. Prolific thinker and entrepreneur, like it. Mary, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mary Kubik. I'm the Gold Star sister of Sergeant Ronald Kubik. He was 375 DCO, killed April 23rd, 2010. I now live out here at what is again Fort Benning, working with the soldiers and the veterans and Gold Star families. Just got my master's in social work and looking to make a difference.
Yes. Good old friend Mary do-gooder. All right, so Mary is going to go first. The first topic is the Trump speech, which was long. All right. So, Mary, you can get started.
So in what was the longest speech in history, I feel like he said so very little. If you were able to read any of the fact check articles, half of what he said was exaggerated or false. Some of the more interesting things that he said where there were countries like Lesotho that nobody has heard of, but we have a permanent mission there. He said that he was going to beat inflation, but inflation is a result of some of the bailouts that he gave to American citizens starting in his presidency and continuing to Biden, predecessed by Obama, that were never relinquished. Only 1/3 of Americans actually approve of his handling of the cost of living. we cut funding to Zelensky, which I don't think necessarily was a bad idea, is what he stated, but we also cut other things in order to get him to the negotiating table, which he was hoping would have been done by the time that he gave this speech. He said that he had accomplished a lot in his first term, which I thought was an interesting word choice, all things considered.
I got to watch part of it, the part where he covered a lot of his accomplishments. And, for the most part, like, I agree with what he was saying. I think that DOGE is good. It's what we needed. And I also, we kind of should have expected that there was going to be some pain in the beginning. There's always conflict. Conflict is what helps achieve growth. And in this instance, the government was bloated, our debt was rising, and he just walked through the steps of how he's fixing that. And along with the DEI culture, I caught a lot of that. And so I was in total agreement and felt like he said exactly what at least his base wanted to hear.
Well, as far as DEI goes, unfortunately, from my perspective, that includes women and minority groups. And so seeing things that people have fought for decades to achieve being tried to be wiped away with just a few pen strokes is kind of devastating to me. I do agree that in terms of education in classrooms and young kids, there should be lines and standards on what they're teaching, but DEI as a whole goes a lot further than the extreme things that they're showing in news articles and on television of what DEI is. It impacts women's employment and their ability to get jobs because they're not primarily chosen for certain roles. I happen to work in hazardous waste, which is not primarily a female position. So if something like DEI didn't exist, I might not have been given a chance at the job that I serve. So I do think that's important and needed to be more critically looked at before it's just pen stroked away. Other than that, I don't completely disagree. I think that DOGE is a great idea, but I do think there need to be some checks and balances in place because just broad stroke cutting things isn't the way to accomplish things. Because working on that side, I tend to see the people that are getting these letters and fired, and it's not from lack of service.
Let's stay focused on the speech.
I want to address a lot of what Mary said, but it's related to the speech. I thought that the thing that was like so clear to me, and it is so clear, is that you can't have an entire party that completely disagrees with everything that a person is saying without it being completely coordinated. So certainly not everybody in that crowd on the left, as we call it, is disagreeing with what Trump said. So I feel like it's pretty disingenuous. And when they're sitting there holding their little signs and they're just trying to, it's a silent protest and they absolutely have the right to do that. I felt like it was pretty disrespectful and was more virtue signaling than it was actually getting anything done, which the Democrats have proven that they're not very good at.
Well, I would disagree that Democrats aren't good at getting anything done, but I'm bipartisan, no partisan. I don't have a party, so I just think people in general tend to be fallible. I do agree, however, that the Democrats mishandled their protest in the past. It's been silent. You can wear coordinating colors. You can choose not to stand for certain things, but it was not supposed to be that auditory display because that really did look childish and demeaning. It didn't make anyone who disagreed look anything but unintelligent, to be honest.
We're in a time now where, and maybe it's always been this way, and this is just how we're experiencing it, but this idea of the left and the right, and that if you're this party, you have to be completely aligned with their values, or if you're on the right, you have to be completely aligned with their values, is the thing that's tearing our country apart. It's a terrible ideology. And, what we have right now is we have a business guy who understands, at least on some level, big organizations of people. He's partnered with a bunch of other guys who understand big organizations of people, which is why they're billionaires, because they can organize people. We're just seeing the effects of what someone who knows how to do this particular thing happen to our country.
All right, that was a great topic. Next topic is DOGE and the federal cuts in the DOD that are planned, the VA, how it's affecting veterans, how much money is being saved, and that whole debate. All right, so Charles, you want to go first?
DOGE is probably the most exciting thing to me about this presidency because it reflects exactly what Trump said he was going to do when he said he was going to drain the swamp. Not only is he cutting spending, but he's using that mechanism to go find where all of the money has been flowing through. And that's where we find the corruption. And so it seems to me like this awareness that Musk has brought to USAID is probably going to lead to, through all those doors that we were trying to find, everyone who's involved in the deep state, or whatever we call the deep state. As far as the contracts and who they're cutting, that's just a part of what we should have expected whenever you're $30-something trillion in debt and you're operating at a multi-trillion-dollar deficit every year. Money has to stop. Money has to stop flowing. And it's going to stop flowing in whatever priorities that particular president thinks is right.
So they promised 54 DOD civilians would be fired starting in February. everyone got sent these letters. Some of the people that I know that work at the VA personally got the letter. Everyone got the same letter as a buyout. The alternative firing letter that's coming around, and they are getting letters, is that they're being fired due to their performance, but everyone is getting the exact same letter, and there's no proof of poor performance for any of those people. So if you work for the DOD, do yourself a favor and print out all of your reviews if you're actually doing your job. More than 25% of the VA's workforce is comprised of veterans. They're not looking for people who aren't working. They're looking for people who just started a job. So I personally know someone that was like a GS-12, got promoted to a 13, but she was new in her position. So she's one of those people that got that letter, but she's got 15 years of government service. So they're not actually looking into it. So I thought one good thing that happened was that the cuts are now going to be at the discretion of department leaders, not just DOGE, because they were just blind chopping as opposed to looking specifically at who they were letting go of. So yes, there's money to be cut. I'd say start from the top, maybe term limits, something like that. But if you're going to cut specifically from salaries, be a little bit more deliberate in your efforts.
I think that Musk said it outright in the beginning is like, you're going to make mistakes. And we know that that's his approach. He's done that in the past in other organizations. And just as a general organizational like leadership role, that's what you're going to do. The big salaries at the top typically aren't the massive operating expenses. It's usually the people at the bottom. There are more of them, but they're also less efficient. There's something to be said about tribal knowledge and experience and what that brings to the table. And unfortunately, whenever you're the new person, you're also the person on the chopping block.
So basically what you're saying is people are those mistakes. So it's not just like if you make a mistake and you trip and fall or spill coffee on a table, like we're cutting people's salaries, we're stopping their livelihood, we're disenabling them to take care of their families without actually knowing what they do. So if we're not going to take a more critical approach, this is going to do more harm than good, short term and long term. I don't see any benefit. The VA is shorthanded as it is. People wait for months and months to get appointments. And so you're cutting jobs without understanding how the organization functions. If you want to get into the organization and really see how it's functioning and who does what before you start firing, that makes more logical sense to me, to gain an understanding and then be like, okay, your job is unnecessary without it being too much of workload. These two people are doing almost the exact same thing for the exact same amount. That could just be one role and we could increase their salary slightly. So it doesn't make any sense to me to just come in and cut everything down without having an understanding of the organization and the jobs that are within it and the functions that they do. Because even an ant has a role in the environment, even though it looks small and you might step on it and not think much of it. The loss of that ant impacts the tribe, in my opinion.
I'm holding the position that this is a dog-eat-dog world, and you don't have a right to a job. You have to earn your spot, whether it was the military or law enforcement or starting up my own business. Like I had to get in there and fight the fight and earn my position and earn my keep. And so, yeah, sometimes bad things happen. We learned in law enforcement, like sometimes there are no-win scenarios and it just sucks to be you. That's the real world. Yeah, I definitely have empathy for the families that are losing their income and then they have to go find another job. But the beauty of the United States is that you can go find another job. And if you can't, then you can just start your own business and try and make it on your own, which is kind of the point of the American dream. So the idea that the government is, the hand holder of the American people, to me, is a horrible philosophy and is part of the bigger picture problem that we have today.
I don't think if the government is handholding, if people have an actual job. It'd be one thing if they were looking at the people they were firing and saying, not that you've worked from home, because you can actually work from home, but that you've chosen not to do anything the past 365 days, and actually your job responsibilities and duties don't make any logical sense. But if they're not going to delegate it or delineate it or investigate it on any way, then it's just blind chopping, and it's not, it sucks to be you or dog eat dog. It's like, this is just stupid and it doesn't make sense. And what's happening is they're realizing that some of the people they fired, they actually needed them in their jobs. So it just needs to be more specific. I'm not against cuts, but I'm against blind cuts and uneducated cuts and things that are going to impact veterans and people that I care very deeply about, both that have chosen a job of service. It's not like they pay well unless you get above a 12, and that have chosen to serve our country and continue to serve our country with a government position. So I don't want to see them just lose their jobs and have to start their own business after investing 20 plus years into this country.
All right. Well, that was great. I had a feeling you guys were going to agree. The conversation over the DOGE cuts was really good. So last topic is Ukraine, pausing the aid, pausing the intel, the prospects for peace, and all those topics. So Mary's going to go first on this one.
Well, if you've been listened to or served me on any level, you know that it's people first in the way that my mind works. So when I think about this, I think about the intelligence being cut off. It completely makes sense for Trump to pause the weapons shipments and pause military aid in an effort to negotiate with Zelensky for peace. But cutting off intelligence risks the lives of the people that are in that country and other countries as Russia continues to impede upon their space and kill people. 80% of Ukraine's intelligence comes from allied countries, which includes primarily the United States. And intelligence is really the difference between life and death there. So intel sharing is really important. So I can understand cutting the other aid in an effort to get negotiation, but intelligence is vital to the war and the lives of the people. And that's primarily what I'm concerned with, is the survival of the people that are civilians and really just don't have anything to do with the war effort itself. They just want to live the same way anyone in this country would want to live and not be invaded by Canada or Mexico or whoever else would try.
I think war is a tragedy, and I think that, the people responsible are the people at the top, and they should be held accountable. And in this instance, that's Zelensky. We saw in his interview at the White House the level of disrespect and an obvious lack of accountability. And I think that he's the one now who's kind of stopping this narrative, which showed whenever he backtracked after that interview and said that he was ready to kowtow. I think that Trump really understands negotiations, and he's willing to walk away from the table. That might mean pulling military aid or pulling intelligence aid or pulling food aid, whatever it is to support. Unfortunately, countries are boundaries of people, right? And it is sad, and definitely would want the war to end. And sometimes ending wars requires extraordinary measures, and this might just be one of those things. So ultimately, I think we're going to get what we want out of that, which is probably Zelensky out of power.
Ultimately, what I'd want is to see peace. And I'm not going to invite you over to my house and then make fun of the clothes that you decided to wear when we sat down to discuss things. I'm going to deal with more pressing issues like the fact that people are dying. And ultimately, I don't think what I'd want, although I guess it's what we want, is other people's resources and money from it, so much as to see a war come to an end and our country not have to get involved in it and more lives to be risked, like little boys like my brother was. Like, I would like to see that not happen. So I would not intentionally incite an individual who was fighting a war for his life and the lives of his people when they came over, if I wanted them to sign an agreement that I would get a percentage of the minerals profits that are in their country. I think that you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I think that if we had a little bit more honey, so many people wouldn't be getting the shrapnel of what's going on over there right now. So I don't necessarily think he's a terrible negotiator, but I hate the fact that it's profits over people as our main negotiating chip.
Yeah, I disagree that it's profit over people. I think that at the end of the day, sometimes what is portrayed on the front end of a negotiation might look a certain way depending on what perspective you're coming from. But in this particular instance, the U.S. wants to get paid back for all the resources that we've provided them. But the truth is that we're our own country, and we don't have to provide them anything. The war between Ukraine and Russia is a war between Ukraine and Russia. The United States stepping in at all, in my opinion, unless it's to stop something specifically to us, anything beyond that is altruistic. And so we owe them nothing, and we've given them the ability to sustain the war on their behalf. At that point, I think it demands a level of respect and appreciation and gratitude. While I think that the Trump poking at him wearing a suit is silly, I don't really believe in that whole social paradigm, but that's Trump. That's maybe one of Trump's weak points, is that he really doesn't know how to hold back the insults. He tries to tear people down psychologically. And I think that people who are strong with empathy, and it really stokes the fire with them, but I think it's mostly just a game.
I think that if we are going to maintain that we've already previously historically established ourselves as a peacemaker, regardless of whether or not that conflict immediately impacts us or not, then we have to maintain that role. If we choose to change that role, I do think it's dangerous short and long term, but we're going to have to draw those lines in the sand, and we're setting standards and precedents with the decisions that we're making now in that regard. So if we're going to maintain peacekeeping, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because the Ukraine and Russia are invading the United States. It's because any war that takes place anywhere on the globe could at one point impact us, because we're one of the wealthiest nations that there is.
Yeah, look, I'm all for the idea that we want to get more connected as a world, and I would love to see a no boundaries situation, but it's countries and values. And in this particular instance, I believe that we should be peacemakers, and I think that we should spread the idea of democracy around the world. At the same time, that comes with demands, and it comes with our way of doing things. And our way of doing things is based on the values we hold. So if you don't want to play ball, then unfortunately, we're not going to fight that fight with you. It happens all the time where people who were friends start portraying the wrong values and they become enemies.
All All right, that was the last topic, and good discussion. You guys have any final words?
It's been great. I appreciate you bringing me back on. This time less the beard. It'll probably be back by next time. But yeah, it was great talking with you, Mary. And I think ultimately, like, even in our discussion, we're not really that far off. And even though my position might be different than your position, and vice versa, I think that the beautiful thing, especially in the veteran community, we have something in common there. And we have to have these discussions to find common ground. So very exciting and very grateful to be here.
All right, Mary, you got any fond farewells?
Well, sorry I flopped some of it, but I got the hang of it towards the middle. But I'm just grateful and thankful that this platform exists where we can openly discuss issues that are happening, whether we agree or not, in regards to fighting or protesting. But we can have that discussion and put all of the facts and opinions and truths out on the table and come to our own conclusions and help other people to do the same. So I'm grateful for this, John. Grateful for you, Charles. And it was a great way to spend a Saturday morning.
Thank you guys for coming on. You did great. That's the end of Real Veteran News 44. So thanks everybody for watching, and watch again next week. Thanks. Bye.